Fun. I used to have fun once, playing Minecraft with the boys, or playing Mario Kart on a rainy summer night. Whatever happened to this? Fun. Now I'm just a cold, cynical man, playing Civilization 6 on deity mode at 12 AM. You know, what's up with that anyway? Recently in my life, I've noticed a trend. That trend being I stopped playing traditionally relaxing or entertaining games. Now I just play whatever the hell this is. Why play a fast-paced roguelike when you can instead simulate the life of a Chinese person? But what's weird is I have more fun playing these tedious, grindy, and archaic games than I do playing the more traditionally entertaining ones. And I wanted to ask myself, what's so fun about playing unfun games? Now the first thing I point to is the achievement that comes with beating them. But I think it goes deeper than that. I mean, I've played some bad games before, and I'm certainly not proud of beating those. Plus, some of these games you straight up just can't beat. Like, there's no end objective really. But it takes a certain kind of man to go home from his 9 to 5 just to play a game that's basically a 9 to 5. Now, calling these games unfun isn't really the right term to describe them, but it's all subjective really. Some people like having to micromanage every single aspect of an imaginary colony, or exploiting a game's features to feel like a genius for discovering them yourself. But you know, for the sake of a catchy title, I'm just gonna call them unfun. But let's delve into a couple of games I myself would consider unfun and analyze what makes someone want to play them. Let's start off big for the first one, Dwarf Fortress. This game is absolute insanity and it makes my brain hurt so much. The original version is even worse. It looks like my computer just got a virus. Despite its gruff appearance though, this is considered one of the best games ever made. And I can see that. This game is so extremely complicated that I would only recommend you play this game if you don't mind neglecting every single aspect of your life to build a fictional dwarf colony. This game requires mental fortitude, it requires patience, it requires intuition, and good micromanaging skills. It's more complicated than some actual jobs, and that is why it's a masterpiece. What other games can you point to where it takes 200 plus hours to just even get the hang of playing it? It is not just a game, it is a lifestyle. And that's what makes it beautiful. There is no winning, only surviving. But while you're surviving, you can immerse yourself in the world. It's not a game meant to be conquered. It's a game meant to be experienced. Dwarf Fortress is art. Okay, onto something that's not art. Any RPG made before Y2K. Okay, yeah, that's a huge exaggeration. Let's be real though, some of these games are laborious to play, let alone beat. One game that comes to mind is the 7th Saga, proclaimed one of the hardest SNES RPGs to ever exist. And I'm currently playing it, and honestly, it's not that hard. I mean, I hate it, and I don't want to play it anymore, but it's so good. It requires a crap ton of grinding, and even random encounters require you to actually use your brain instead of just mashing attack. I adore the graphics, I love the atmosphere, and the music is top notch. This game is so unapologetic in how hard it is, and I really love it for that. I mean, I know why it's so hard, because some of the localizers screwed with the leveling system or something like that, and it just kind of messed with the whole game and balancing and stuff, but I don't really care about that. This is one of the few cases where the American version is actually better than the one in Japan. Anyway, another unfun game, Final Fantasy Legend 2. This game is really hard, and that's coming from a guy who thought the 7th Saga was easy. Grinding in this game will get you absolutely nowhere. If you think you can make the final areas easier by grinding a bit, you're just wrong. The random encounters later in the game are harder than some actual final bosses in other games. It's extremely annoying, but it forces you to think quickly and plan out how every single battle will go before it even happens. Not many games have caused me this much stress before. It's great. Breath of Fire 2, one of my favorite games of all time and regarded as one of the hardest SNES RPGs ever made. Do I think that? Nah, it's really easy actually. I think a thing I love about RPGs is the options in terms of micromanaging and experimentation. Now, a lot of people find this kind of stuff boring, you know, you gotta just discover stuff in the game. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. But I think RPGs utilize this really well. In fact, Breath of Fire 2 is a perfect example. I loved meticulously shaping my party into something that goes beyond what the game intended, being able to one-shot some of the hardest enemies in the entire game. I think in general, that's what people love about these unfun games. The idea of finding some genius strategy that basically conquers the entire game. It's not just the management aspect that makes it fun, it's the experimentation combined with the management that gives the player the feeling of complete control. The gameplay isn't the sole focus of the experience, and that's what makes it so great. The Civilization games come to mind when I say this. One of the main mechanics of those games is finding ways to excel in spite of the circumstances presented to you. Oh, you had a really crappy spawn and want to reset? Nah. How about you improvise and create a giant trade empire to make up for your lack of resources? Or you know, you can just beat the game with no city at all. Another example would be basically any roguelike which forces the player to take advantage of what was given to them. And I don't mean those fast-paced, action-packed roguelikes. I mean the ones that make you want to cry until there are no tears left. In those games, any good player can prevail even when they're given absolute garbage. But now that I've sort of described what makes an unfun game fun, I think I should describe what makes an unfun game an unfun game. Unfun. Lack or absence of fun. Okay, I don't know why I did that. That was really pretentious. I'm not a pretentious video essayist. I need to stop. I'm sorry. Okay, but an unfun game can stem from anything. Maybe it's a good game that the average person will look at and think it looks too boring or slow paced. I know when I first saw the gameplay for Stellaris, I thought the people who played it were sociopaths. I mean, they are sociopaths, but not for the reasons I thought. An unfun game can also just be a bad game, but generally, devs don't just wake up one day and say, alright, I'm gonna make a game that's straight up not fun to play. I think it's more nuanced than that. God, I sound so pretentious. There's a level of intentionality when making these sort of things. With bad games that aren't fun, they're just unfun because they're bad, like they failed at making a good experience for the player. But games, like RimWorld for example, are meticulously crafted to create an experience where people are wanting more. I mean, I have 500 hours on RimWorld, and I don't think I've actually ever had fun playing it. But that's okay because it's still one of my favorite games of all time. I also have a ton of hours on Ark Survival Evolved, and I wouldn't force my worst enemy to play it. Okay, seriously, to your viewers, don't ever play this game. Don't look at it, don't touch it, don't consume it, don't do anything with it. Just stay the hell away. But I still love both of those games because they're designed in a certain way. I mean, I wouldn't call Ark Survival Evolved a well-designed game, but it's a designed game, alright. But I'd like to dissect the features that make an unfun game enticing to play. Number 1. Difficulty. A common trait that these kinds of games have is that they're really hard. These games just throw you into the deep end expecting you to drown, and most people do. Most just quit because it's too hard or confusing. But those who do stay may like the difficulty, the feeling of accomplishment when you overcome adversity in the game. The player may get angry, they may swear off the game for life, but they'll come back. Challenge is something most of us lack in day-to-day life. Most of us just roll through life doing mundane tasks every single day. That's why it's always refreshing to be faced with a challenge, especially knowing how low stakes it is in the grand scheme of things. Number 2. Open-endedness. A lot of these kinds of games give the player a lot of freedom. Even when the game has a story, the game doesn't tell the player what to do or how to do things. It's up to the player to explore, even if this exploration is tedious and often time-consuming. Breath of Fire 2, for example, there's an integral mechanic that the game hardly tells you about. In fact, you can get locked out of certain important things because the game doesn't bother to hold your hand. The open-endedness sort of allows you to make your own narrative. Wikis and guides won't really be as useful to you because it's up to the player how they use this information. What may work for some probably won't work for others, so even with the vast world that is the internet, it still requires the player to experience things for themselves because each person's circumstances are unique. And finally, number 3, repetition. A lot of these unfun games are very repetitive, whether it be grinding for more experience or an item you want, or restarting saves because you made a stupid, irreversible mistake. The repetition can either be boring, engaging, or anger-inducing, but in spite of this, you're always gaining something from it. You're always working towards something. Even if you're bored, you stick through because you know there's a light at the end of that tunnel. That repetition allows the player to improve, whether it be in stats or in knowledge. In my opinion, these are the 3 fundamentals of an unfun game. These are pretty interchangeable, and it doesn't need all of these aspects to be considered unfun, but generally, I'd be able to apply at least 2 of these aspects until I consider it that. But I just wanted to explore this real quick. If you're watching, I recommend you play at least one game that you think looks too complex or just boring in general, because you may end up becoming obsessed with it. Anyway, I gotta go to bed, so see you guys later. Peace out.